Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Shahin Ghadir with the Fertile Life Podcast. Today, I'm very excited to have a very special guest. Amanda Lauren from the Bougie Adjacent podcast is here. And also, she is a writer and a host. And she's going to be talking to us about a lot of interesting things today. But one of the things that I would like to do, as I normally do, is give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves. And then I have some ideas of what we're going to be talking about today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I know that Amanda she talks and teaches people about lots of different aspects of life, which I love. She interviews lots of people from different paths of life. But one of the most interesting things that she and I had the opportunity to talk about was an area that is really not discussed enough in the world of fertility. And it's the area of miscarriage. And luckily, in this day and age, it's getting a little bit more spoken about. You know, we were always given the advice and giving patients advice, don't tell anyone you're pregnant until the end of the first trimester when everything's perfect. But the problem is that women have miscarriages at very sensitive times in their life, in their earlier part of the first trimester, and then no one's there to support them, and no one's there to talk to them, and no one's there to give great advice other than their one person, their doctor. And in your situation, you didn't get the best advice. So I'd love for you to talk to us a little bit about that. And then we're going to start talking about the other part of my show. It's not just fertile. It's also about life and some fun things that's going on in your life.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, I don't want to say I had bad advice. I had no advice. It was so bizarre. And I live in Los Angeles. We're in a major city. There are tons of doctors here. And my doctor acted as if he told me he'd been in his office since the 1970s. This guy was old enough to be my grandfather and acted like it was the first time it happened. He actually didn't even tell me. A different doctor told me, a perinatologist, which is a doctor I had to see because I took allergy medicine while pregnant. I also had Bell's palsy at the time, and my speech was very, very off. It sounded like I had a brain injury. And I think that also sort of led to people not treating me the way I should have been treated. And I know that sounds awful, but I really, in retrospect, I'm like, oh, that explains so much. They must have thought I had a low IQ, or there was, I'd had a stroke or something, because that's what it sounded like. But the doctor said to me, let me cut to the chase. You had a miscarriage. Like an Amazon package was going to be a few days late. It was so bizarre. And my husband wasn't there with me because of COVID. He was FaceTimed in, but the reception wasn't good. He couldn't really hear me.
That's really awful because, I always talk about my path to parenthood with my wife, and we have 4 kids. And after our first child, we had a miscarriage as well.
I'm so sorry.
And it was later, and close to around 10 weeks. So I feel and understand everything that you're saying right now. And I think that made me personally take a different aspect and look of what I say to patients when they're having miscarriages. And it's really sad. Thank God, with genetic testing that we do on embryos, the risks of miscarriage have gone down significantly, but they still happen. And there's no way to get rid of every risk of miscarriage in the world. So I kind of feel you there, and I feel bad that you had to go through such a horrible experience. What exactly happened after that?
Well, I actually have a question for you now, which is, I know you're supposed to be asking me the questions, but are doctors trained in bedside manner at all? Because you would think if you're going to be working with women in women's health, in something where 10 to 15% of, this is a statistic I read from the March of Dimes, so it could be wrong, could be right, end in miscarriage. How are you such a jerk? Aren't doctors taught to be, doctors to me are kind of a step below God, to be honest.
That's kind of you, but I don't know if I'd take it that far. I do not remember ever having a class teaching you about bedside manner, but what I do remember is when I was doing rotations and working with doctors that were really kind, respected, thorough, professional, those were things that I'd like to keep for myself and remember to add to how I was doing things with my patients. I think with that, we did have a course, I remember, it was dealing with difficult patients, and it would set you up with actors and actresses that were coming in and acting like really crazy patients and what you would do in a situation like that, which really tested how calm you can be and how in control you could be when someone's yelling and screaming at you, which honestly doesn't happen too often in my practice at all. But it did, I think, prepare me to some level. Now, I think with that being said, I'm always learning. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to be a better doctor every single day. You know, I realized that my style maybe 10 years ago versus now was much more rushed. I was trying to get through everything and ask a million questions and talk like this, and I don't need to do that anymore. You know, I have a better intuition. I know the better direct questions that I need answered, and I understand now better what my audience is. So patients that call you do not understand and have all the knowledge that you do, and I think it's really, really important how you address something. And we always talk about, in my practice and also on my podcast, the emotional, social aspects of, you know, treating a human being, a patient, and how important they are undergoing fertility treatment. So for me, it's really important to not forget about that.
Well, and you're like so hormonal. Like having a baby is such an emotional experience. Your hormones are all over the place. There's a pandemic. I'm alone. I can barely speak. And it's just like, it was horrible. And then my regular doctor basically didn't want to give me Cytotec, which is a medication to release the baby, or a D&C, and he's like, just wait.
Yeah, just that. So that's a completely opposite. Usually when I diagnose someone has a miscarriage in my clinic, within a day or maximum 2, we usually generally do a very mild, light D&C that does not scrape the lining of the uterus too hard because we don't want to affect future fertility. And with that, I like to send the tissue off for genetic testing and see exactly what the diagnosis is. So if it ever were to happen again or even again, I mean, we know what's going on every single time, and it's easy. It's like a $99 fee now you add to the tissue being sent off, and they send you this unbelievable pathology kind of result. So it's important for us in my world to do that.
And we chose not to do that because I released the baby at home, and I was basically walking around with a dead baby inside of me for 2 months. And at that point, I was I don't remember that 2 months of my life. It was so stressful. It was so miserable. And also what no one tells you, again, I was prepared in no way, but I was especially not prepared for it. Can I be a little bit graphic?
Sure.
This won't gross you out, but if people are listening, the vast quantity of blood that is...
Yeah, no one should be experiencing a miscarriage at home. And that's why I like to get people in and out. It's a 5-minute procedure under a light sedation to do a dilation and curettage, D&C, and be done with it. So I just don't want anyone to ever experience that. And it also, you have no idea when it's coming. So it could be a week later, it could be 3 months later, like happened to you 2 months later.
Well, it didn't even happen to me 2 months later. After 2 months, I was at a mental breaking point because I've been bleeding for 2 months, okay? I actually asked for psych meds when this happened. He refused to give me any medication. This was the 1930s. I mean, I don't know what the 1930s were like, but this is what I imagine it was like, where it was just oh, she's hysterical, leave her alone. And what we were told was we tried to find another doctor. Now, this was last year, I guess, a little bit less than a year ago. And you could not get an appointment anywhere. My husband was calling every place, telling every doctor on our insurance, this is what happened. Can you get it in 3 weeks from now? And I was concerned I could have gone septic. I was concerned that just emotionally, I couldn't take it anymore. So we were told, and this is the wildest thing, by a nurse practitioner and 2 doctors to go to the emergency room and lie and say I had a fever.
Wow.
In a first world country, in I'm just what? And my husband and I, listen, we're both educated people. My husband has a master's degree. We're this doesn't seem, and we seem to have a pretty good understand. I think I have a better understanding than most of how the medical system, then I would say not than most, but then compared to the average person, because I write about, wellness for a sweat life, and I've interviewed doctors and I've spoken to people, and, I love to read about this stuff.
So let me ask you a question. Where are you now in this process, if you don't mind talking about it?
I am, well, we've been trying for a.
Is this something that you discuss with your audience?
I do, actually.
Okay, I love that.
No, I've been really open about it. I didn't talk about it for the first. Time is so weird during COVID. For months, I didn't discuss it. Or, at a certain point, I told people that, I had a miscarriage. I was trying. I did IG stories during IUIs. Like, hey, I'm getting my trigger shot. All of that. Because I want to normalize it. Like, because I felt so alone and just rudderless with this whole thing. Like, what do I do? I just, like, it's weird. Like, I wish someone had told me what to do. Like, I wish I had, like, I don't want to say a big sister, but, like, kind of
Well, I'm sorry we didn't know each other then. I would have taken care of this whole thing for you and told you exactly what to do. But now we know each other, and hopefully this will never happen to you again.
I fingers crossed, let me tell you.
And we are available to help anyone, including you, moving forward to get to that goal. So,
which is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be. I guess you heard it for the first time here. I'm going to be doing IVF.
Okay. Well, we are ecstatic to help you get through this IVF. I think it's going to be exciting to talk about this path and let people know exactly what's going on, because I think it is getting much more accepted. However, with that being said, I think it's still very, very foreign and also intimidating to the average person that doesn't know much about it other than their friend did it and their other friend did it. Because everyone has a friend that's done fertility treatment now, or everyone's had a friend that's froze their eggs, but they still don't know details about it, and it could be very overwhelming not knowing all of that. So you heard it here. We are going to be starting. I didn't want to be the first to say it, but I'm glad that you did. And hopefully following up with this, we're going to be able to talk about in retrospect and talk about it and how you're going to teach people a lot from this experience of yours.
Well, oh my God. It's hard because, like, there's no one, and that's actually what I really like about your podcast, is that there's nowhere to really learn this. And one thing, when all of this happened, obviously I'm Googling a lot of information. And, there's a lot of people talk about, I hate the expression fake news, and misinformation. I hate both of those expressions, but there is a lot out there. And I'm pretty good at this point at vetting information, especially when it comes to medicine. And when you look up stuff about miscarriages and fertility and anything tangentially related, a lot of the information conflicts, or it doesn't make sense. Or it's just really hard for the average person to understand. And I think that the way you make it accessible through this podcast, through what you do, it's so, even just like having calls with you and you explaining things to me, it's so helpful. It's so incredibly helpful to women.
Well, I appreciate that. That's something that, like you said, I've learned. And I've always been a good communicator, but over time, explaining something at the basic level. Sometimes I'd be, years ago, like just walking by one of my partner's offices, and I'd be like, gosh, that explanation, I don't think the patient's going to get that. Like, I barely understood it. It was so sophisticated. And you have to know your audience, and you have to know who you're talking to and how to explain things. But I'm excited. I'm very excited to move forward, and I hope that you are, because this is going to be hopefully turning out to be beautiful.
I mean, listen, I have so much hope about this, and I should tell you. So my mom's best friend had twins at 50, like 26 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like, when IVF was first starting, her husband had to have a reverse vasectomy. She was like, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but not really. She was like pretty overweight. Like, she had a lot going against her, especially back then. And her twins are now, like, married.
Oh, wow.
And they both got married, like, the past year. And I'm just like, I see them. I see they're, like, and I'm just like, okay, they were IVF babies. I'm going to have my IVF babies. And obviously the technology, I assume, in the past 20-something years has improved greatly.
Not comparable. What's going on now in the IVF lab, and then it's not even the same world. It's so different and so incredibly advanced right now. So you'll see. We'll talk about it here as well. I want to know a little bit, when you talk about lifestyle and interviews, I want to know a little bit about what you're doing and talking about, because that, like, really interests me a lot. When you say you talk also about, like, lifestyle, and please give me a little blurb on what it is that you do there. I love to hear.
I am obsessed with decorating. I love it. I feel like I'm constantly decorating. We rent, and I literally redid my rental. Our landlord does hate us. It's okay. And I just think that, like, we live in
Why
this...
would your landlord hate you? Wouldn't your landlord love you if you, like, remodeled and improved things?
I ripped out a closet.
Oh, no.
Like, there's no, like, my husband almost had a heart attack, and I'm like, sorry about the security deposit, babe. But I am, like, a big believer that we sort of live in this world where there are all these girls on YouTube and Instagram, and they're all at Target and IKEA. And then there's this Elle Decor AD. And I'm kind of talking to the people in the middle who are probably shopping at CB2 or Pottery Barn. And, like, maybe they have like bookends like I do from Target. But, you know, it's a little more upscale, a little somewhere like attainable in the middle. Also, I speak to the person that is not good at DIY because I am not good at DIY. When I have to DIY something, I get out Venmo and someone comes and they do it for me. And to me, that's just as good as DIY.
For people that don't know what DIY is.
Yeah, do it yourself.
Do it yourself. Okay. So
do it yourself can mean
So I actually hate doing things myself like that. So I really hate putting furniture together, even though I've noticed that I'm getting much, much better at it, and I don't want to get to bring someone in. Some of them used to be so complicated, but things that you have to put together yourself now are a little bit easier, so I'm okay with it.
I can't do it. Like, I look at the IKEA hieroglyphics and I'm like, this is not for me. And my husband's like, this is not, although he once assembled a CB2 bar card and he will not he cannot live this down. He's like, but I assembled that bar cart from CB2. This was 7 years ago, Ethan.
Oh gosh, that's
this
hilarious.
Was 7 years ago.
Okay, so I definitely want, and you know what, if anyone wants to see where you're talking about this, can you please let us all know?
I write for Forbes. And I try to have my articles be very, very practical and sort of
And are
helpful.
your articles in Forbes, are they talking about design or are they talking about lifestyle or what exactly?
They talk mostly about design, although I feel like lifestyle is part of it. Like living in a nice home. Like, listen, everyone wants to live in a nice home. And I'm like one of those I think you think everyone can get pregnant. I believe that anyone can live in a home that they love.
You know what? You just said something that I've always thought, and I never really understood. So I think that even if you don't have a lot of money, you can live decent. So I'm going to give an example. This is hilarious. I haven't really repeated this in over 30 years. When I was in med school, I had an apartment, and I really didn't want to get a lot of furniture. So
Was it a bachelor? Was it a really bad bachelor pad?
No, it really wasn't. It was a decent apartment, but it was just like a bedroom and then a little space for a living room, and it was nothing more.
So it was like a studio.
No, it wasn't a studio. It had separate rooms, but I decided I didn't want to go buy 2 nightstands and then not know what to do with them a year later when I was going to move out. So I took 2 really strong cardboard boxes, and I took this fabric and I put it on it and I stapled it all the way around the bottom and then turned it upside down, and they became 2 perfect nightstands. So I realized wow, this is crazy. I don't know how I figured out how to do this or why I did it, but I did it, and it taught me that you could live in a decent space that looks good without spending a ton of money. And I think that when you live somewhere that looks decent and is put together well, it also you feel better.
Totally. You totally feel better. So now I'm going to tell you what you should have done, because this is my job. You probably should have gone on Amazon and gotten floating shelves and sconces as the lights.
So Amazon was not as big a thing, or I don't even know if Amazon existed when I was in med school, but giving advice now to someone who's in med school, who's on a really tight budget, you're absolutely right. That's an amazing thing to do. And I literally can't wait to start looking at the ideas and stuff that you give people, because I love that.
I mean, you can do that for literally nothing. And I'll tell you, I'm a very high-low person. I have a vase. I have a baccarat vase and I have a bed from Wayfair. Like, I am very, like...
You've got to be, because I think, like, if your entire house is baccarat, then that looks really cheesy as well. And if everything is Wayfair, then things are going to be falling apart real soon. So I think it's really nice to do that. Good. I like that. That's exciting. That is going to be... We're going to be talking about that stuff when you come in for your ultrasounds.
I know. We're going to be talking about, like, babies' rooms. And I'm going to bring you little wallpaper samples. And I'm going to be like, you're helping me create my baby. What do you think of this wallpaper? And I will ask you.
Cannot. You're going to bring them in, and I'm going to have a lot of opinions, because that's what my wife says I have. And I'm going to be able to give them to you. And that is hilarious. And I cannot wait until you complete your baby room, and then send that to me, and I'm going to put it all over my social media channels.
Oh my God. No, I'm so excited.
That'll be our celebration.
I have a question. Do people ever think they're having a certain gender, and then they're like, no, I'm definitely having a girl, and then you tell them, and then it's like, it's totally wrong?
Well, when we do artificial insemination and people don't know, yes. When we're doing IVF with genetic testing, a lot of people choose the gender of the available embryos they have. But then again, there's some people that do not. So, I mean, I really don't know. I don't think there's any feeling you can have that is so accurate about the gender, but people swear that they do. So I don't know. I don't want to say no.
I mean, there's a 50% chance either way.
Yeah, exactly. So you can't go that wrong. You can't go that wrong. Well, I want to thank you so much, Amanda, for being here today. I've really enjoyed talking. I can't wait till you share this experience from what you've learned in the past and where you're going now, and share it with your audience and my audience. Everyone's going to be so excited to learn more about the steps that you've taken and what you're doing proactively to get to where you are. And thank you so much for being here with us. Can you please, if you don't mind, give my audience, just let them know what your Instagram page is?
It is in the handle. It's Amanda Lauren.
Okay, wonderful. And also the name of your podcast.
Bougie Adjacent.
That's right. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening today. It was a pleasure having Amanda here.
It was so great being on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we will be back next time. Have a wonderful day.